Apparently, this corrections officer allegedly duped an ex-Olympic skater into signing over his will. And this is going to get probably pretty darn dark. I mean, oh Lord, let's just get right into it. This is crazy. So a married Idaho corrections officer allegedly duped a former Olympic speed skater into a relationship in a twisted plot to become the beneficiary of his will before contributing to his death, according to cops. Marina Billings, 49, a corrections officer in Pocatello, Idaho, is accused of exploiting 68-year-old Boris Lakin in the financial scheme that also involved her husband, Robert Billings, 70, according to Fox 13 Now. After meeting the former athlete online, Billings moved to Utah to live with him at his home in the Salt Lake City suburb of Cottonwoods Heights. The news outlet reported, at least at first, Lincoln was unaware she was married, cops told the station. The seemingly healthy man's health then soon began to decline, and he was hospitalized, ABC4 reported. So Billings told Lakin's neighbors that she moved in to care for him and to control his finances during his hospitalization, according to the station. Kinda already sketchy. But after he was released, Lincoln was isolated from others and was hospitalized again when his health deteriorated a second time, ABC4 said. Kinda sketchy again. So at the hospital, Billings restricted visitors and claimed she was his fiancée, according to the outlet. Citing court documents, hospital staff said Lakin appeared severely neglected, the report said. Now, before we continue, this is dark, right? Like you basically convinced someone to fall in love with you, potentially, so that you could basically pretty much torture them to death so that you could get basically free money. Like, there are some like crazy scams that exist out there, right? Like that squid token thing. But this is just dark, where you're purposely like going out of your way to harm someone for money. Like, that is dark and disgusting. So his neighbors told the outlet that Billings invited them over one day and told them she was adjusting Lincoln's will, claiming he was suffering from a terminal case of mad cow disease, an incurable neurodegenerative disease of cattle. The neighbors told ABC4 that Billings' husband was present when they arrived. That is creepy. They said Marina placed a pen in Lincoln's shaking hand and forced him to sign the amended document while she spoke to him in a peculiar manner, like a dog, the outlet reported. Lincoln died on July 6, 2021, and during a search of Billings' home, police found a secret basement where they recovered copies of Lincoln's will, power of attorney, and medical records, ABC4 reported. So Billings, a booking deputy at the Bannock County Jail, and her husband have been charged with financial exploitation and aggravated abuse. Jeff Hall, the chief deputy at the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office, explained why they weren't charged with murder. So, in a murder charge, we would accuse someone of directly causing the death of someone else and doing that unlawfully, Hall told Fox 13 Now. In this instance, the allegation is that these people created circumstances that compromise a vulnerable adult's health, not necessarily that they directly caused a death. So investigators are still trying to determine if the couple intentionally got Lincoln sick, Fox 13 said. So the Bannock County Sheriff's Office said Billings had been placed on administrative leave while the county conducts an internal probe, the East Idaho News reported. The Bannock County Sheriff's Office expects the highest professional conduct of its employees, both on and off duty, which includes conformance to laws, Bannock County Sheriff Tony Manu said in a statement. So the Bannock County Sheriff's Office is cooperating fully with the Utah investigation, he added. And Lincoln, who continued to skate well into his 60s, was reportedly one of the oldest athletes to compete in the U.S. Olympic trials. He was a Masters World Champion and set a Masters World Record in 2006, Fox 13 reported. And again, like, this is so dark, right? Like, this is so dark because allegedly you got a cop committing adultery while also committing a financial scam, while also basically committing aggravated abuse, potentially leading to the gray zone of potentially murder, so that she could get the will of a person that originally, allegedly, fell in love with her, to then where he is now constantly being abused and basically killed, right? Or just basically let to die. And like, this is like a really dark scenario. Like, this is like one of the worst ways to make money. This is one of the worst ways to treat another person. Like, you never want to treat someone horrible just to get something out of them. Like, that is really dark, right? And it's like, it's very different. For example, like, let's say that you have a business, you sell a product, and someone just doesn't like your product. That's perfectly fine. But if you basically convince someone to fall in love with you, then where you end up basically abusing them to the extent where their health deteriorates to such an extent that they are basically on their deathbed and they eventually die, that gets super, super evil, right? Like, that's pretty much the best way to put it. Like, this is evil. If this truly did happen, because again, you know, innocent until proven guilty, if this truly happened, what a horrible way to treat another human being, right? And just so that you could get money? Like, there's easier ways to make money. There's kinder ways to make money. You'd probably make way more money doing something legally, right? And you don't have to harm another person for doing it. Like, it's just, like, this just gets into like such a bad scenario. I hope this has never happened to anyone that ends up listening to this. Like, this is just super sad to read. And like, it kind of goes to show you that just because someone is wearing a uniform where they are a cop doesn't necessarily mean that they are necessarily good, right? And there are people who, of course, support the cops. There's also people who do not like the cops. But the thing that you got to understand, cops are humans. And guess what? Humans are not perfect. Humans can be evil. And so something like this can happen even if they wear a uniform. So that's something to keep in mind, right? But the thing that really like bothers me as well, the fact that she's just on leave, right? That seems very questionable to me, that she's not been arrested at all. Like, that's really disturbing, right? Because you have potentially someone who potentially planned, allegedly planned, basically on the gray zone of murder, and she's not been charged with anything. Like, that's that's not really a good sign. But that being said, this is why whoever you end up becoming into like a relationship with is very important, right? A lot of people think like, hey, I'm just going to like hook up with this person, I'm just going to sleep with this person, I'm going to date this person. Not that big of a deal. No. Whoever you end up dating, even if it's a one night stand, can become a pretty serious deal, right? So you got to be very careful with this stuff. And by the way, never let someone that you're just dating take control of your will, right? Unless you two are married, where you are partners, don't let someone else control your will. Period. End of story. Now, if you appointed them as like a trust, like a trustee or something of a trust that you formed in case of your passing, that's completely different. Don't let people control your finances ever unless you're married to them, where you're partners with it. Like, you need control of your own stuff. Don't let people have access to your stuff. Be very careful with who you end up getting into a relationship with. And if you do end up finding out that they are already married or in a relationship, don't get involved with that person at all, right? Like, some people might end up like listening to this, and you might be like, I don't know, hooking up with someone who might be married, and they're like, just want to hook up with you because they want to have fun with you or whatever. That could be potentially a listener. What I got to say is, you're playing a very dangerous game, right? A lot of people think that these like flings or one night stands are not that big of a deal, or like hooking up with someone's wife or husband is not that big of a deal. It is. There's a lot of risk that comes into play with that, so to be very careful, right? Like, it could get so bad, it could get dangerous. You could potentially lose your life in that scenario, depending on how the partner ends up reacting. So just be very careful who you end up becoming into like a relationship with. And for those that like lean kind of like more on like a dark side of trying to like make money, like the black hat stuff, I think is that is what it's called, black hats. Don't harm people, right? Like, don't be tempted to harm people for trying to potentially get easy money. Like, I've watched a lot of American Greed back in the day, and what you can pretty much see from all of that, you're always going to end up being found out if you do something bad, right? You're always eventually going to get found out if you harm someone like that. Like Bernie Madoff, like a perfect example. So it's like, just be a somewhat decent human, right? Like imagine doing this to someone who's like lived a long life, pretty much did everything correctly from what it kind of seemed like, to then basically be tortured basically to death. Like, that is so dark. But if you want to learn how to get out of debt, go to 40inbox.com. This is just dark.